Hey, what's happening, everybody? Robert Phoenix here, back again. Friday FARcast time. We got Steve Thor Mercer in the wings, hanging out under the cone of silence. We got Jasper, strategically situated right here on the broadcast console. And then, roughly about 45 minutes or so, we're going to be joined by the one and only Sonia Barrett, the real Sonia Barrett, who is going to be sharing some really fascinating insights with us. If you're not familiar with Sonia's work, you're in for a real treat. She's the real deal, total package. She's a healer. She has a fantastic grasp on the holographic universe, creation as a matrix, the matrix as a creation principle, breaking the spell. It's going to be fantastic. She's got a new article out. We're going to talk about a new article and really try to drill down into the core of her work. So I'm looking forward to that. I've been aware of Sonia for quite a long time now. I started kind of following her back around 2010, 2011, and everything I read was like really interesting. Like, this person's coming from a really exceptional place, a really high place. So, all these worlds are starting to converge now because Sonia has a pretty tight-knit relationship with Emily. I think she was just on Freeman, or is going to be on Freeman. She's been with Randy. So, it's part of this kind of extended family of real free thinkers, people in the vanguard, people that really value things like liberty and freedom and creation, and not following the unfortunate herd. So really glad to have her on. She'll be on hour number 2. From today in the first hour, I'm going to try to get into some of the history of the polio vaccine and some of the things that were contributing to the conditions that people were experiencing in the United States at that time that were related to the vaccine. Today is the anniversary, 1956. I believe this is the 64th anniversary of when the polio vaccine was made public to the general public, right? So there were a series of tests, of course. If we could believe that Jonas Salk actually inoculated himself and his family, if we can believe that, that was considered to be like the very first trial run of the vaccine. And of course, theoretically, they didn't get polio, and who knows what happened to them. I'm not sure if they were that they came down with any kind of illness as a result. If they did, I'm sure we wouldn't hear about it. But based on that, they moved forward, and there were 2 other sort of previous trials. There was one in his hometown, not his hometown, but where the Salk laboratory was located at that time, which is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And then they did another kind of bigger run in Falls Church, Virginia. So those 2 trials were essentially the guinea pig sessions for the kids that were getting vaccinated for polio. And then in 1955, that's when they decided to take it to the herd, right? Take it to the herd. So we're going to look at some of that. I'm going to play you a promotional film from the 1940s that actually sells, not sells, but selling the concept of polio. And it feels like a lot of the same kinds of, themes, a lot of the same players, not really the same players, but sort of in the same universe are popping up. You have people like Bill Gates and Fauci who are cut from the same cloth as Jonas Salk. And then one of Salk's competitors at the time was a guy by the name of Sabin, Sabin. And he and Salk actually hated each other. But Sabin was the guy that was really, really pushing the oral vaccination for polio versus the injectable vaccination, which of course is what pretty much won out. So we're going to get kind of into the history of polio a little bit, clearly looking at the conditions that led up to what was considered to be the polio outbreak of the 1940s and leading up to the 1950s. So before I do that, though, let me just take a peep into Chatlandia. Let's see what we got here. We got Jolie. Hi, Jolie. What's going on, Jolie? There's Annie, the wench with the wrench. Nice to see you, Annie. Maury's back in the house. Uncle Glenn had a couple of IPAs. Dawn, my mom went paralyzed for 4 days after the administration of those sugar cubes. I had those. I remember the sugar cube effect. The Lunar Ladies, aka Shannon. What's going on, Shannon? Nice to see you. Let's see. Eagle ZXZ. There we go. Well, he's in the house. Jimmers. FUP 77. What's happening? Vaccine given free at our town hall. Absolutely. Let's see who else we have in the chat. JMP Love. What's going on, JMP? There's Christy, Tamara. My man, Kevin. Get ready. Contact tracing. Oh, boy. Yep. And Judy, funny Judy, I was on a message board, and one of the topics on the message board was, how come nobody names their daughters Judy anymore? I thought that was pretty funny. It's kind of true. Hi, JW. Good to see you. Nice. So there's a lot happening, obviously. One of the things that I found to be quite interesting was the fact that the Michigan Congress, or the Congress, a state Congress of Michigan, has decided to push back on Gretchen Whitmer, which I think is really interesting. I don't know if you guys saw the video, but a bunch of people with guns went into the state house there in Lansing, which is where it's at. So Lansing was occupied by Second Amendment people, right? They were there. The Second Amendment gang was inside of the state capitol. And Whitmer she didn't back down. But now here's where it's getting interesting with that battle. The state Congress of Michigan basically said, we're going to wipe out your recall order, or we're gonna wipe out your lockdown order. Essentially nullify your decree, as it were. Now, Whitmer is going to double down, and she's going to say, she's already said it, that she is going to veto anything that comes out of the Congress. So Michigan is a state that really bears watching, because they have taken this thing to a whole other level. Like they took their state capital with guns. Okay. Look, it's America, right? Got the Second Amendment. This is what this thing was set up for. It was set up for being able to theoretically defend oneself, but also as a hedge against tyranny. Okay. So they were there. They got the attention of their Congress people. The Congress people were there. They were wearing Kevlar vests. Nobody's going to get shot there. It's not what's going to happen. But they made their message loud and clear. And those Congress people are like, hey, look, we got to be we're on their side. So Michigan definitely bears watching. I had a look at Gretchen Whitmer's planets, and I posted over on Twitter that, not surprisingly, she's a Virgo. Okay. And she's got a sun Venus conjunction in Virgo, almost exact. So of course she's going to have this heavy-handed Virgoan sense of control. Like, in the most mildest kind of interpretation, she might be a germaphobe, in the kind of the worst part of the application or the definition is that, and Virgo is a weird sign. Like, I think it's one of the more difficult signs in astrology. I'd probably rank it number 3 in astrology. I think Pisces is the hardest sign. And then behind Pisces, I would put Cancer as the hardest sign. And then Virgo, I'd probably put number 3, right? Those would be the 3 most difficult signs. And there are redeeming qualities to every sign. And, in my estimation, humble estimation. But when Virgo is out of control, right, Virgo becomes a big freaking control freak. So she's so this is the sort of the metastasized shadow side of Virgo, which is all about control, wanting to control the environment, wanting to control what people do, and usually out of a sense of what, like service, or in this case, health or safety. But the thing that really sort of, got my attention with her chart, the Virgo certainly popped up, and she has moon in Sagittarius. So it's square her sun. Right. So the moon in Sagittarius is a sign that's like, It's big, and it generally does not like to be told what to do. As a rule of thumb, that's the nature of Sagittarius. But this expansive emotional nature, and because she's a Virgo, she's supposed to serve the people. They're in conflict with one another, right? They're in conflict. But that's not the sort of the what I would call the tabula rasa of her chart. It's the fact that she has Mars in Aquarius and her true node is in Aquarius. This is a radical revolutionary spirit, right? So, and it's a fixed sign. So once she gets on that kind of Mars trip, and by the way, Mars has been in Aquarius. She's been having her Mars return, which is why she's been so forceful. When Mars goes into Pisces, it's going to start to oppose her Virgo planets, and I think she's going to be in trouble when that happens, because she's going to have forceful opposition coming at her with that Mars opposition. The other thing that I noticed about her chart is that she doesn't have hardly any water. She has Jupiter in Scorpio, and that's it. And as we've noted before, a lack of water in a chart generally tends to trend towards a lack of empathy. So there's your Gretchen Whitmer breakdown. Keep your eye on Michigan. Things are moving very, very quickly, as always. Fauci has announced, of course, that we can expect a second outbreak. And not only that, but he plans and they plan on having the vaccine by January. Now, you know they already have the vaccine. You know they already have the vaccine. If you don't know that they already have the vaccine, you're way behind the curve. You're pretty asleep, and that's okay. We're here. We're here to give you a little pinch, splash a little cold water in your face. It's okay. They've already got the vaccine. They just have to wait for the appropriate time to administer the vaccine. And Fauci knows that there's going to be another wave. There's going to be another wave of the so-called coronavirus. And that's probably because they've been busy little beavers installing 5G. That's what they've been doing this entire time. While everybody has been in their pods, they've been installing 5G. Now, how ubiquitous the distribution of 5G has been remains to be seen. And there certainly seems to be a correlation between electrification and then the excretion of the excuse me, the exosomes. Seems to be a correlation there. There also seems to be a correlation with other factors when it comes to disease or wellness. We're going to get into some of this with the polio vaccine and what led up to it. But again, Fauci has basically saying we're going to have the vaccine by January, and our goal is to vaccinate 300 million people. Think about that. 300 million people. That's a fairly significant number. And they're letting you know in advance that this is going to take place. And they're in the slow creep mode, which means they're ramping up to this kind of, how do I see this? Pre-programmed version of mind control. So they get you to follow whatever it is that they want you to follow along the way. First things first, stay at home. Okay, we're going to stay at home. Fine, we'll stay at home. And then come all the other little tweaks to the experiment. Okay, you can go to the store, but practice social distancing. Now there's the social distancing factor. Okay, we practice social distancing. And we go to a place like, say, Walmart. I don't go to Walmart, not now. You go to Walmart, and I stopped going there for a very specific reason. You go to Walmart, and for a while, you just walk in, keep your social distance, not a problem. Now, when you go to Walmart, you've got to go around. You got to go do this barricade thing. They're like checking a number when you walk in. And apparently, there are like arrows going up and down all the aisles. And you've got to be able to follow the freaking arrows. And if you don't follow the arrow, they will send out an associate. And they'll say, can I help you? Can I help you? Like, get the fuck out of my face and let me shop. That's the best help that you could do. So now it's gone from, okay, go in, social distance, to go in through the barricade, Now go in and follow the yellow brick road. And so it's all about entrainment. I found out that Costco is now mandatory masks in Costco. That includes the employees. Could you imagine being an employee and working 8 hours a day with a freaking mask on? I can't begin to think what that would be hell. That would be hell. It almost feels like they want these people to quit so they can move everything offline, which is, I think, ultimately what they want to do anyway. So they've got to wear masks. And I feel for these people. I personally, if I was an employee at Costco, I would get together with all the employees and say, look, we can't wear these masks. We cannot wear these masks. Let's not work. Let's just not work. We're not going to work. What do you think Costco? I don't think Costco could run out and just start to hire people. Although I'm sure that there are people that would go run out and get a job at Costco because a lot of people are unemployed. Although some people are getting more money from unemployment than actually being employed right now. So that might be a bit of a moot point as well. So I think it's on the 4th of May that the nationwide Costco law has to be in effect. And I have a rebate that I need to spend. So I'm going to make one more Costco run on Saturday, which is kind of before the drop dead date. And there's a Costco in North Austin, Cedar Park area, where Cedar Park's outside of Austin. They've got a whole different sort of protocols, so you don't have to wear a mask. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to burn my rebate check, and that's it. I'm done. I think as consumers, we have to be able to practice some form of civil disobedience or commercial or corporate disobedience and not support these entities. Just not support them. And it's unfortunate because the people that take the hit are the people that work there. People that have, like their 401ks and all the medical stuff. And, they're the collateral damage in this scenario. And it's really, really unfortunate. And, hopefully they're going to start to open up some of these local businesses. And when they do, you should support the shit out of these local businesses. Just support them. Whatever they do, right? Do your best. Like, keep them afloat. Keep them going, especially if they're a business that has intrinsic value to your area. We're pretty lucky here. We got an Ace hardware store down the road owned by a local family. Man, that place always busy. They're going to be okay. If you got a local hardware store in your town that's not an Ace, whatever, make sure you support them. The other thing that is really going to get really tricky right now, and I've talked about this before, is the food supply. And this is really another part of the Agenda 21ification of society. If you look at what's going on, they're just putting all the Agenda 21 pieces in place. Oh, you're not going to get meat. Sorry, you're not going to get meat. Well, what are we going to get? Well, there's this thing called the Impossible Burger. This Impossible meat. You'll love it. It tastes just like meat. And apparently Bill Gates has investment money in the Impossible Burger. Now, I don't know. I don't have the links to that, but you guys are super sleuths. You could check that out. Wouldn't surprise me. And the Impossible Burger sounds a whole lot like Soylent Green to me. I think you've got like fetal cells in the Impossible Burger or something like that. Doesn't surprise me. So, I would suggest, if you can, really support people in your area that are doing things with cows or pigs or chickens or whatever. And if they're slaughtering them, processing them, butchering them, these are the people to support. Okay, because it's gonna get tight. It is going to get tight with the food supply, and especially the animal proteins. And I'm a meat eater, so I'm unapologetic about that. And working on getting a fair amount of beef protein in the not so distant future. And it's important. It's important. We got to cover our bases with this stuff, right? So the food supply is kind of a big deal. Just file that away. There's a lot happening now. There's a lot happening. The volume seems to be getting turned up on both sides. They're going to run out this contact tracer program. People are going door to door. Apparently they're going door to door and getting blood samples in Atlanta, Georgia. I read about this today. Now they're saying that it's not mandatory. They're going to try to see how much they can get away with people just going, okay, roll up their sleeves. If they came to my door, it's like, no. First of all, I'm not opening the door. That's the other thing. You don't have to open your door. If somebody comes to your house and they want to talk to you, you do not have to open the door. Remember that. You don't have to open the door. You don't. Even if it's somebody who is from is a law officer, it's like, you don't have to open the door. Are you arresting me? No, he'd like to talk to you. Are you arresting me? I'd like to talk to you. Okay, if you're not going to arrest me, you need to go away. All right, you need to go away. Don't open the door. You open the door, you open up a whole new set of parameters, right? Sometimes you don't even have to answer the door. Isn't that a really mind-blowing concept? Somebody comes to your door, you're like, I don't know who that person is. You don't have to answer the door. What are they going to do? Sit there for the next 5 hours, wait for you to come out? Or they could probably talk to you and say, we'll be back, blah, 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 blah. Okay. You don't have to answer the door. If you do answer them, you don't have to open the door. Just remember that. Just file that away. Okay. And there may be some extreme case where you have to open the door. If you do, you better know what you're going to say. That is really a very, very important component around this. Sonia's in. I was going to bring her on at around 1, but I think I'm going to bring her on now because you guys get to listen to me all the time. Let's bring Sonia. I think we can get this thing rolling and ready to go. I'm going to promote her. I'm going to move her up to the panelist section, panelist level. Give her the upgrade. Let's see where we are. Hey, Sonia, can you hear me?
Yes, but can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay, I didn't get to check my cameras or anything, so I was gonna do that. So just give me a quick second so I can make sure I'm good.
Okay, all right. So Sonia is checking out the high tech aspects and specs in her home studio and making sure that they're tweaked properly. And as soon as they are, we're gonna bring her right on here. And so Steve, of course, is cruising around Chatlandia. And if you have any questions for Sonia towards the end of the show, please make them visible and clear so Steve can jot them down and then bring them onto the show so that Sonia can answer them as well. So keep that in mind because I'm sure that we're going to have a lot to talk about and we'll bring up a lot of really interesting questions or just points of interest in your own mind. And let's take full advantage of Sonia being here because she's a real resource and has a lot to share on many, many different levels. So how's it going? Are you ready to rock and roll?
Yes. My camera is just, I don't know if you have to free me up to be on camera.
I do.
All right.
So I'm going to basically, where are we here? You're going to start your video. And now you can start your video.
All right.
There you are.
There, yes, here I am. I'm not sure where that is, but I'm here.
Greetings.
Hello.
Thanks for being on the show today.
Wow, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. I've been aware of your work for a very long time. And I remember when I first started doing this stuff over on Blog Talk Radio, I had a list of people that I wanted to be on the show, and you were on my list. And then I kind of like lost track, but I think I would get your emails and like, wow, this woman's really interesting, really, really interesting. And then time sort of slips by, but here we are. I guess this is our moment of destiny, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Timing, you never know when. So
Yeah.
here we are. Yeah.
And a lot of the folks that are, watching this or in the chat room are very familiar with you. Some of them have done your workshops, and so they've got a real connection with you. But for those of the people that aren't familiar with you, let's talk a little bit about yourself, and maybe you can share with us sort of your journey, like sort of evolutionary points, things that sort of woke you up, tweaked your consciousness, and led you to kind of where you are today.
Well, I guess for those people who are familiar, they know the story. So I'll just kind of condense it. My story really began from a place of not having any any of this kind of information at all. So we're talking, my whole life, but I always pin it down to 1992. 1992 was a very big year for me, getting a divorce, and that moment of really questioning life and all of this, and what is this thing we call life. That was for me a very beginning point, and to cut out a lot of what actually happened, or what I went through. I will say this, that I went at this on my own. I didn't know anything about metaphysics, and then I didn't know anything about conspiracy, anything. I came at this extremely raw. But the one thing I knew was that I just felt that there was a way to know a lot of things. I know that there was a veil to be pierced somehow, and that I was going to do it. So on my own, I set out to meditate, learn how to meditate on my own, because I didn't know what that was. I came from a church background, religious background, where it's prayer, you just pray. So I came at it just digging, and eventually I pierced the veil, and on my own. And after that, it was like a child in a candy store. And what I did discover is that you couldn't ask one question without this big picture. So then, yes, then I got into a lot of the what we call the conspiracy stuff. I met Jordan somewhere in the 90s, and
Jordan Maxwell, right?
Jordan Maxwell,
Mhm.
which, yeah, I got to know very well. But I met a lot of people in that sense later on along the way, in the sense of that. So in asking questions about spirituality and asking questions about what is life, it all was just dovetailing into the same thing, into all of these questions, the political stuff, the things that are that appear to be hidden, ancient history. I mean, it's like everything is connected. And so that's kind of where it began for me, and most of what I've written over the years have been information that I have just been able to access.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of basically it. And when I deal with other things that I'm adding, I get directed generally to supporting information, whether it be political or whatever. And so I've gone, I do that because, of course, it makes people realize it's not just me saying something, but here is some evidence. And I took the trail of the sovereignty movement at one point.
Right.
I used to go to sovereignty court. I mean, I filed, papers. I've done a lot of that. I do nothing with it at all at this point.
How did that work? How did that work out for you? Were you able to kind of navigate that and get the desired results? Any pushback?
Oh, embarking on the sovereignty movement, particularly from that point in some of the newer stages of it, there is just so much. There's so much paperwork. It's just constant. It's just this constant. And you have to remember that the world is not educated. So law enforcement is not educated. Most people aren't. The banks aren't, educated. Even if they are, the higher ups, you're not supposed to be educated. So it can become this battle, this war. So eventually what happened is I learned, I mean, I was able to do some things and file some papers, but now it matters not to me. So what I learned is that you just get moved from one list to another list. That's all.
Right. Right.
Leaving, thinking that you're getting out of something is an illusion. This game is massive, and it has many layers, many components to it. And over the years, I have learned and accessed an awareness that has freed me from many of those things. However, I needed to take that journey so that I could better understand the dynamics of this 3D matrix, the game, how that is constructed on all these various levels, leading back into, secret societies and a lot of ancient stuff. And then beyond that, and this big, massive stew that we're part of, and where we go from here. So no, I don't operate from the standpoint of fear. So I learned that the more empowered you become, and the more we understand this, the more the war, you let go of the war. So those are all things that I learned over the years, and have evolved to that. I left a lot of the articles going back to at least 2001 on the website, because I'm fine with people seeing my transition, my evolution. I didn't take them down. I leave them there because a lot of them are still relevant, but I'm fine with people seeing my journey and my growth.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be one of the things I was going to ask you about, because there's such a wide breadth of material on your website, which is the realsoniabarrett.com website. And the sovereign stuff was in there, a lot of material around healing, alternative health, corporations, time travel. I mean, it's a veritable encyclopedia of things that have really drawn your interest and you dove into and try to understand and integrate into your life. So it's a great resource. No matter where you are on the path, you'll find something there. So let's just bring this thing fast forward into the future, into the present right now. It seems like, and I want to touch on your article, your latest article, which is about the World Reordered and the reset. Let me just throw it up here on the site, really, on the show really quickly, because it's a really, really good article. And let me find, where is Sonia? Just had you here. Hold on. Oh, here you are, right here. Okay, so that's going to be under articles, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Sonia's articles.
Yeah, a few of Sonia's articles.
I started to make a distinction with a few of Sonia's articles, because it was a lot there, a lot of articles.
You are prolific. That is an understatement. See, this is the article that we're talking about here. The ushering in of a new ordered world, a time of resets and upgrades in the system. And my familiar has decided that he wants to block your website. So you need to get down. All right. You got to move over here. Thank you very much. Yes. Sonia's more important than you are right now. Okay.
He's like, not really.
So I just want to read a little bit of this, if you don't mind.
That's fine.
Life happens intentionally, which I think is a really important opening. Intentionally. Despite appearances, there is nothing random about each moment, each experience, and each expression. Life results from a series of events, a chain reaction of outcomes, a reaction. This chain reaction has its beginnings from a nameless and timeless point where nothing is everything and everything is nothing, that which is the substance of life, all life. This life substance echoes throughout existence, while at the furthest end of the echo, we find ourselves distanced from deep levels of self-awareness. So something happens here and we're part of the downstream of that event.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The paradox, however, is that we are the echo that is being broadcast, informing the spectrums upon which life itself is being played out. This is really a very dense, but very readable treatise on kind of the nature of reality, where we are now and where the potential is in terms of everything that's happening with our reality, theoretical reality being reordered and reset. And then what does that mean for us? And how do we affect those changes in our own lives? And I sent this out to a friend of mine last night, and she loved it. She was absolutely blown away. She said, thanks for sending this. So you guys can link to this, and you can send it around and share it around. And This is a really exciting time for us because people are open now. There's been this kind of rent in the veil, and this is a really important time to be able to insert big ideas like this one. So let's get into this a little bit, and let's just talk about where we are now with this quote unquote corona crisis, which is really kind of a mind virus, and yet there's potential here to reorder on a lot of different levels. So Sonia, why don't you jump on in and kind of give us the view from your perspective about what's happening now?
Oh, wow. Oh, boy. There's so much that it leaves me speechless. But yes, the article, for anybody who wants to read it, because there's so much stuff. And I've written so many things since that time too. So I'm always having to go, well, which part did I write about? Okay, so basically, everything is happening right now. So even the situation that we're in with the government and what they're doing and all of that obviously is part of some sort of upgrade and reset. And it's different levels of this. There is the level on which we're looking at our governmental systems and those systems in place that are the authority systems that are doing things to seem to control what we do, put us basically under house arrest and control our lives. But at the same time, they're creating these upgrades that are technological, mainly technological upgrades. And those technological upgrades are for the implementation of other things. So that is, that's just a small part of it, which is what I talked about in the article as well, why we seem to be removed from the street, so to speak. And yes, and when we do look, we do see that there's lots of things going up. So there is that reset. Now that reset also has to do with, people are complaining about 5G and all of that. And I keep saying that's just like the kickoff, it's going to get bigger. We're just in a kickoff stage. And so on that level, on the 3D level, in order to really do this reset, they needed also everybody, as many people globally, to be online, because this new transformation, this new transition, this reset, like smart technology, does require, besides our devices being online, it does require a new level of us being online. Now everybody's online, and it is an opportunity to test the structure, the durability of the structure, and how things are going to be working with all of these people now bombarding this system. So when you think about it, and we're fussing about 5G, we need to understand this is a rollout, and we won't really see the largeness of this for maybe 5-10 years, because 6G rolls out in about 10 years, but it's going to get tested. So that's why I say that to people. You've got to understand where you stand and dealing with yourself, your body. So now let's go to the human being. I mean, there's more to that part of it, but let's go to the reset of the human being. All right. So the human being is going through a personal reset, because it's not the same for everybody. Everybody is going through a reset according to where they are in their understanding, in their journey. I also like to refer to this reset and upgrade from a default standpoint. So I talk about the fact that there is a default upgrade, and I've talked about that for several years, a default upgrade that happens. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that the system that we are part of, like let's call it a simulation, whatever you call it, it operates in cycles, right?
Yep.
We can just have that basic understanding of seeing the most basic cycle, which is your day and night cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And how does your day and night cycle happen? Your day and night cycle happens based on a quantitative process or quantitative evaluation of your minutes of a second, and what the most minute level of counting even a second to a minute to an hour to 60 minutes to cycling through to 24 hours, and then that 24 hours cycles through that day and night. Now it's the next day again. So you see the cycles that then add up to what, to 30 days or 365 days. I'm just trying to show you that natural cycle that
Right.
you're part of. All
Mhm.
right, so we see that that cycle in place. Now we are networked into this cycle. We are networked into it. How do we know that? Because that's how it where our aging is being counted. How long have you been here? Oh, I've been here. I'm a 2-year-old. Oh, I'm a 50-year-old.
Mhm.
It's you're part of this network, this cycle. So somehow that network is connected with your brain and your biology as well, which is how it knows to start you up and shut you down.
Right.
Meaning, when puberty begins, it's in a cycle. We tend to start puberty at a certain age. Well, at certain age, it's a cycle. So something is navigating the cycle. Something is keeping track. Something is kickstarting things. And then then suddenly there's the shutdown that starts. So now human beings start to age, you start to get old. Women supposedly go through menopause. So there's a cycle that's going on. So now you kind of have an idea. I did talk about the general cycle, the 26,000 year cycle, or the 426,000 year cycle, which is
Mhm.
what, 104,000 year cycle. So
Mhm.
we have these tiny cycles that start out as seconds and less than a second, that eventually become these big cycles that the planet goes through. All right. So now we see we're in this bigger cycle, which 2012 we heard about this 104,000 year cycle. Well, we're in the field of that cycle that is going on, which means that ever so often in these cyclic transition points, there's cyclic transition points, and that means that human beings and everything in it must then go through some sort of upgrade. It becomes an automatic upgrade that happens when human beings are more so in a unaware state, a sleep state. This construct, this system automatically has to upgrade everything in it and everyone to a certain point. Doesn't matter if that person seems like they're aware or extremely aware, doesn't matter. You're getting upgraded according to where you are and what you're coded for. You're getting that kind of upgrade. It's necessary in order to continue to be part of this construct as these changes are unfolding. And so you get people that are leaving, people that are dying, people just aren't coded. They're coded to be here for X amount of time. So that's what I mean by this default upgrade that naturally happens, which we saw come in with the swing of technology. That was evidence of that upgrade.
Mhm.
The swinging technology, the uprising technology is triggered by these changing cycles, and human beings are triggered to question, to become more aware, to be to shift into a space that allows them to be more technologically active and alert and capable and all of that. They're mentally available, and brain wise they're available. Certain people are available to make those changes.
Mhm.
So that's that automatic upgrade. And so when we what we see now is this shift that is happening. So even though we're upset with those folks, they are part of this wheel that is happening. They're
Mhm.
part of this wheel. Now, we each have an opportunity to wake up and decide the level of upgrade that we are choosing for ourselves.
Mhm.
You cannot choose an incredibly expansive upgrade if you are in a state of unawareness, if you are limited in your belief system, if you are stuck in a comfortable beliefs, if you don't want to budge off of what you believe. This requires fluidity. It requires a flow. It requires that kind of awareness for what? For your brain to stop filtering certain aspects of potentials, because your brain filters according to what we can accept as a possibility, individually and collectively.
Mhm.
So there's a filtering that's happening with the individual and as a collective. And so when people start to get into a space where they get this and they don't back away in fear, because that's what's happening a lot now, is a lot of fear. People are in
Oh
fear.
yeah.
And what's the purpose of the fear, Robert? How is the fear being administered? The core, a human being's core fear, right, is death.
That's right.
A human being's core fear is not existing, is not surviving. And so the system, um, it has used health as a way to get people to be obedient and to be a savior, because right now that's where people are. They're in savior mode. They're hoping that they will get saved. They hope that they will create the vaccine that will save them. So yes, people are being obedient because they have told you, if you listen to us and you do what we tell you and you stay inside and you wear your mask and you do these things, chances are you will get out of this okay. So
Mhm.
that is our greatest fear. We are about survival. Human
Mhm.
beings are wired to survive this experience. And unfortunately, yes, as part of what pushes us forward, maybe I shouldn't use the word unfortunate because it's just part of the construct. As
Right.
part of even the default program, it's a way to push human beings to move. It's either you're going to become more aware or you're going to settle. And so right now, that is the momentum that's pushing humans to either wake up and they're going, wait a second, I don't believe this, or they go back, they remain asleep, or they'll fight you on it.
Right.
So it's a very interesting time, but it is an incredible opportunity right now, an incredible time in shows like yours to bring information to people, providing that they're open. And there's always somebody who, I'm fascinated, Robert, by the fact that you'll get somebody that will hear something completely different than what was said here today. They will have a completely different interpretation. When people do that, it's because they're scared to remove their filter. They're
Mhm.
scared to step into the unknown.
Mhm.
And that's okay too, because maybe you're not here to go, the long haul of the journey. Human beings are changing. That is true. Um, and there's a change that is happening to evolve a human being, just as we've done forever, from cavemen to creating, discovering fire, to walking around without clothes. Not that that was even a bad thing, that
Right.
was just what it was,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We are far removed actually from the naturalness, the actual truth of the provisions that have been made to actually take care of us.
Mhm.
We are far removed. So we feel like evolution is really about us wearing clothes and going to get our prescriptions filled. No,
Right.
that is actually far away. And I'm going to say one more thing too, is that because we don't understand that the cycles and everything is technology. It is a more advanced technology. Nature is technology. Your body is technology.
Mhm.
And nature does look for survival of the fittest, not necessarily based on the Darwinian principle, but based on picking up the frequency of an individual's consciousness. That's how it's evaluated. Where are you in your consciousness? It's all frequencies.
Mhm.
So it's picked up no different than the system itself picks up the frequency and brainwave patterns and are able to evaluate and to see, like the Global Consciousness Research Project out of Princeton.
Mhm.
They're able to pick up brain waves, and so nature does the same thing. it's being it's not being biased. It's just the way it all works. Nature wants to continue to expand. And in order for it to continue to see what it can be and what's possible, it needs for human beings to be in a certain state of growth, of evolution, in order to continue some various levels of expanding. And those expansions I'm talking about is what would be defined as superhuman abilities, are supernatural abilities that have been they've been dumbed down so that we could experience the limitations.
Right.
And so here we are now. We are in that process of opportunity to begin to go back to those supernatural abilities of telekinesis, telekinetic abilities, and all of that. That's why all the movies have come out in the last several years showing those things to trigger the human memory and a human mind of what they are and what is possible.
Yeah. Wow. That's a big download. I have a lot to sort of, share along those lines. Where do I start? Well, first thing that I wanted to throw out there is what you're talking about around this fear of death and this whole thing around the coronavirus. They just dropped us right down into the first chakra, right? They just like, here you go, get right down into that base chakra, and we're gonna isolate you and insulate you with the most fundamental and basic fears, right?
Yeah.
The fear of survival, the fear of whatever, fear of not having enough food, the fear of dying. And paradoxically, right, the other side of that would be the crown chakra. And so in astrology, we talk about this sign, but when we talk about this sign, we're always talking about the other sign in opposition to that, right? So as we're having this dive into the first chakra, what are they really, what's the real clue here? It's up here. It's the crown chakra, because they're taking us further away from that experience. It's like, hold on a second. We don't want a level of humanity, and I'm going to use the word ascend, but not in that kind of.
Right. I know what you're saying.
Yeah. We don't want them to ascend to this place, because when they get to this place, there are all kinds of options available to them.
Right. Game over in that sense.
That's right. So let's drop this right back down into the root, and let's get as many people as possible to buy into the fear program, because I think we were getting kind of close to this place. Right.
Yeah. Well, there's, this is what's interesting. When we say, I know it's like we do want to see that there's a majority. Well, first of all, I always say we have no idea who's here. We don't know what the numbers are. There's so much.
Right. Exactly. I'm with you on that. Like, there's 7 billion people. Really? How do we know there's 7 billion people?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. The only thing that we ever know about the world, I always say, is the interactions that we have immediately, that because it's all smoke and mirrors, not by their design per se, but just the construct, the technology that we're dealing with this brain interface with this idea of reality. So the people that we come in contact with, they are real for us, real from the perspective of interaction and a relationship and exposure. The person we bump into on the street, the store that we seem to walk into, with that world, that's all we know of the world. If we are going to be honest, we know nothing but our immediate interactions with the world. Everything else is brought to us through videos and images and pictures and stories. We only know when we are interacting. However, we are part of this feedback loop, and so we are being affected. We are feeling the effects of a story, of a program, of something that has been put out there. And you're right, when we are brought down to this level, that chakra level, this is a game. And many people used to go, "What do you mean it's a game?" They get so upset. But in this game, the job of this construct is not to make it easy for a human being,
right,
to figure out the next level beyond this particular, what I call level 1 human game. You have to make your way beyond and out. And what causes that to happen? you end up having to wake up. The more you wake up and you become aware and the more you understand, you're pushing your own self up, up, up. And that is the idea, yes, of ascending. You're just ascending into more expansive levels of frequency and vibration in this construct. So from that perspective, we are doing that. You and I are doing that. The people that we, we connect with, that we can talk to, that are understanding this on that level, they're doing that. So I can't say the collective, like everybody, we're getting there, because we don't know what everybody is. We have no idea.
Right.
But what we know are the folks that we're interacting with, the folks that are listening to your show or watching your show. We know of that in that sense, but we could never really rely on their numbers for anything at all, and they're quantifying life. The other part of this, with this situation right now, is everything that's being rolled out with, which is a census. There's no coincidence. The census is this year. You've got the real ID that's this year. You've got these rollouts right now, this particular year. Now think about it. You have a technology that's getting ready to explode and expand in such a way that you need to document as many what we define as people as possible, many entities as possible, in that construct. You have to have information that these folks exist, and you as many DNA opportunities as possible.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yep.
Yeah, the swabbing and the started out with the ancestral stuff a while back.
23andMe. They weren't getting enough people in that arena, so they had to like open the game up in that place. Yeah,
and these are things that people need to understand. You start, the more you let go, you will see. And again, I'm always telling people, this is not a good or bad thing. In my opinion, it's just I'm seeing. And when I allow myself to see, I can make choices that are workable for me. I can make some different choices. I'm like, that's interesting in the game. And we, I have friends, we're, like Emily and stuff, we were able to sit around and we can laugh and we talk about the stuff, which is really exciting to do, because we can really laugh at the game. That is one of the greatest, what do you call it, potions for changing this game, because you decrystallize fear, you decrystallize a lot of the constructs that are being projected at your mind to accept as solid and final, and and what we define as real. So there are many things happening here. Reality is not a singular experience. There's just a whole lot more going on here. It just looks like we're in one idea of reality, but it's not. There's all kinds of possibilities that are happening. And so when we are educated enough and we are aware enough, then the choices that we will make may very well land you in a reality. Right now, we're okay, as far as we know, we're in a reality where we're talking about these things. But then there's a version of this reality that may be something completely different, where there's, more people that are, even falling for this or whatever. So it's not a singular interpretation. And we need to keep in mind that these structures in place on the bigger level, I'm not talking about the little level like the president, I'm not talking about those people. There's bigger structures in place that are aware of the sciences, because always goes back to all of that. They're aware of the science behind much of this. That's why everybody has to be studied based on down to the race of people have to be studied in order to know exactly how to affect us through many different ways. And that is just the nature of this level 1 human game. It is about war. It is a warring game. It is about opposition. And it's about all of those things. But it's to push you forward. It's to get you to either snap out of it People want peace. They go, oh yeah, we're praying for peace. If everything was the same, there would be no momentum. So
Right.
keep that in mind. So this is the nature of the game, and it is your opportunity and your decision as to whether you want to dig deeper, go down that rabbit hole of discovery. The deeper we go and the more we discover about who we are, the truth is actually the freer we become and the less impacted we will be by that minuscule level of the structure. Those frequencies are a lot tinier than the frequencies that we can actually align with and tap into and bring ourselves into that space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's really fascinating to watch how people are responding to this time. Like, I can clearly see there are basically two mindsets. There's one mindset of people that want to just, take the shackles off and really invest in a freer, more egalitarian, sovereign life, right? Like, this is the call to arms right now. And then on the other side, there's another group of people that want to hunker down and bunker in, and they're not really interested in freedom. They're more invested in quote unquote safety, right? And
Right.
that's fine. I mean, if that's your reality, that's fine. But I find that group has a great deal of antipathy towards the people that want to be free. And I see this consistently, and they'll snipe at them, and they'll come up with snotty little memes, or
That's the way they do it.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
absolutely right.
and it's like they're going to they don't want to just be isolated and secure,
Mhm.
right? They want to make sure that any kind of vestige or any persona or symbol of this freedom thing is eradicated, so they never have to look at it,
That's
so that,
right.
so that they can all be kind of entwined in
Mhm.
their consensus reality, which is incredibly limiting, but in
They
their minds
disrupt it.
safe, right? So
Right. You're right. They disrupt you. They want that kind of disruption. Not only do they want it, but the part that can be annoying is the fact that there is such a majority that is like that, that the whole system in place, I'm talking our governmental system of people in authority, they rely on those people because the laws and the rules that get created are generally in support of that. Yes, and the rest of us do end up having to interact with that. But sadly, the rules and laws and a lot of that is based on those those people. That's generally what happens. So here we are. We got TSA, we got pat downs, we got go through the scanner. We got all those things. And what do those people say? Well, I as long as we're safe, I don't care. I'd rather them do this. That is the take that they have, and that's what the system hopes for. Years ago, I kept saying everybody's asking about this healthcare. I'm like, they want you to keep doing that because they're gonna give you what you want.
that's right.
But for years, I kept saying, I'm like, that's what's going to happen. You're going to keep asking, and they're going to give you exactly what they want. They want you to keep asking. So they go, well, the people ask for it. And then here you go. Here it is right now.
Right.
So the rest of us now have to find ways to navigate around it. And it is an obstacle course. It becomes a real obstacle.
But to your point, it's part of the game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is something I talked about a few weeks ago on my Sunday night show. It's like, folks, we're in a game. Like, this is a cosmic game, and they're playing a role, and their role is to make things difficult, tricky, so that we can get through this thing and wake up to higher levels of awareness and novelty.
Right.
And when we understand that, then it's like, okay, well, let's put our game pads on, right? Let's do this. Let's invest in it.
And some people are just here to be disruptors.
Yeah, they are. And even the NPCs, right? The NPCs are here to play a certain role.
Yeah.
And that's and they're kind of a non-participatory part of the game in some ways, right?
Right.
I wanted to ask you a question. Now, what do you think the percentage is of, like, quote unquote awake people and people that want to continue to expand and invest in this idea of freedom versus the other side, which wants to hunker down and hold on to their fear paradigm. What do you think the percentage of that is?
And that's just it. That's exactly just it. You don't know. I don't even, it's like a long time ago, I used to use the phrase, you don't know how many real people are here. I don't even know. You don't even know who's actually here. This is what sounds so ridiculous.
So bandwidth of consciousness. Let's call it bandwidth of consciousness.
Yeah, bandwidth of consciousness. I'm gonna say that it would feel like there is less. There's a smaller amount of people in a certain level of awareness, because there's different levels of awareness.
Right.
I've met people who think that they're super aware, and then I hear stuff they say and I'm like, oh my goodness. So there's different levels of awareness, and then there seem to be the majority, a majority, if we're going to quantify it, that is going in the opposite direction, because moving forward is fearful. It's a very fearful thing, what we're talking about. It's the questioning, it's the self-responsibility. So I'm saying that it feels like there's a larger amount of people. Maybe that's just the feeling we're supposed to have. See, that's the other part of it. Maybe we're supposed to feel like there's all these people that are there doing stuff to us, or doing the stuff that they're doing, or not moving forward. We do encounter that. I mean, we see the trolls on YouTube and so on, people that just like to come by and click, thumbs down. They haven't even watched it. I mean, so we see all of that. So I'm going to say that's what I would say if I were saying this. I say it doesn't matter though. I say it doesn't even matter, simply because the only thing that matters is you. Like each person, that's the only thing that matters, because your journey and the kind of evolution you're making is going to continue to navigate and land you in positions, whether it be actual physical locations, encountering with certain people. It's going to navigate you in the direction that is going to continue, as long as you're continuing to take you where you need to go. And you're going to see a lot of smoke and mirrors. Now that's where you have to go, wait a second, okay, so that's all made up. So we get a lot of that because it interrupts us, right? It's like a bill collector or something. You might be feeling real balance, and then somebody calls, and then it disrupts you. So we get a lot of that interruption that brings us back into what? Brings us back into the core story. That's the game. It's all about pulling you back into these core survival stories. That's what happens. And then it feels a little challenging to tap into the actual power part of you that actually does provide for you. But then the game tends to get sharper, where right when you think you've got it covered, you're like, okay, I'm in balance. I get this. I'm making things happen. So now something else happens that shakes you. So then suddenly you're back over here again. And it's this kind of dance. It's this kind of dance until we start to realize that we have an accumulation, a foundation of things, of evidence, then of evidence of having come through every single apparent obstacle. The more that we build that, is the stronger we become, to a point where it doesn't matter anymore. And when I say it doesn't matter, I mean like it doesn't matter. Listen to the language. It doesn't matter. For it to not matter, it means it doesn't crystallize anymore. So the stories, you don't get pulled into the smoke and mirror stories, not quite like that anymore. And that's the whole thing. What matters and what doesn't matter. What crystallizes and what doesn't crystallizes. That is how we're defining what's real and not real. Real, I speak of in the holographic canvas as realm of focus. That means that which we are focused on, the point in time, that realm, that space, that moment that we are focused on, that we are having some sort of relationship with, whether it be emotionally, an emotional relationship with a thought, an idea, or a physical thing. That's where everything gets decided as to the realness of it then, or the
Mm-hmm.
crystallized version of it. We have
Yeah.
to be able to see through the smoke and mirrors in those moments and go, wait a second. And when you say wait a second from a real powerful standpoint, and you go, what, I'm just going to be here, I'm going to stand here, and it goes away.
Mm-hmm.
um Raiders of the Lost Ark. I love this part of Raiders of the Lost Ark because it's so symbolic. When he said with the Ark of the Covenant, he's like, don't open it. And when it was opened, and I remember Indy saying, just close your eyes, don't look at it. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Close your eyes. And when they closed their eyes, what happened? Everything just went around them.
Right.
When the people that opened their eyes and they're engaged with it, it was the fear, it was everything became very real.
Mm-hmm.
The people that weren't in observation of this thing, what was going on, they were okay. So that's the standstill. The standstill, let the storm pass you by.
Mm-hmm.
That's your decision. You get into the eye of the storm, you want to tangle with it, be ready to tangle with it, and be ready to be able to be strong enough to pull yourself out, because
Mm-hmm.
this is nobody can pull us out. There's a fail-safe system in us where no matter what kind of mind control that happens, nothing, there's a point where nobody can actually access and tap into. It doesn't seem like it, but that's the design.
Mm-hmm.
That's the construct, and that is the part we have to unlock, and nobody can unlock it for us. And this is the reason why, because it's a fail-safe system, and you have to be able to get to it like a video game. You
Right.
have to be able to get there yourself, jumping across all these obstacles.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Wow. That's a really great summation of sort of what's happening and where we are in this, kind of quest in a lot of ways to awaken and get to this realm of the supernatural being, which is really, who we are. I mean, you get down into the DNA and really peel back some of the DNA and some of the stuff that we have. And we touch into this from time to time in our own individual lives, but it's just a little glimmer. It's just a little slice.
Well, we get pulled back by the stories. That's what happens. That's exactly what I mean. We get a little slice, and then right when you think you're grabbing onto something, something comes along and distracts you. Okay, well, you're getting ready to do your show. The internet's not working. I mean, it just be anything. Now you're pulled into the story because now you're irritated.
Well, I've always been an adherent of chaos. I actually like chaos.
It's powerful.
Yeah, I like. I mean, too much chaos is crazy, but I've never strayed from chaos, because if you can manage chaos, then it's easier to manage reality in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah.
We're always tested. I'm tested with my ability to deal with chaos, but I think you should make an ally of chaos, though.
Yeah, well, that's why the system says, and on your money, out of chaos comes order.
Right.
Because they know that, and that's where we are right now. Out of chaos comes order, the new ordered world.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. In this chaos, that's what's happening. A new order is being formed in formation. So we are falling into a new level of formation.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely. It's really funny that the example you gave for Raiders of the Lost Ark, just close your eyes. Yesterday, I watched this movie from 1966 called The Trip. Do you know this movie with Peter Fonda?
You know what? I could have seen it. I don't remember right.
You live in the Los Angeles area, don't you?
Right.
You should watch this movie, because it gives you an idea of LA during the psychedelic 60s.
I probably might have seen it. I don't know. It's old, so
It is an old movie. It's written by Jack Nicholson. Peter Fonda's in it. Dennis Hopper's in it. So Peter Fonda takes a hit of acid, right? And he puts this blindfold on, and everything is cool when he's got the blindfold on. But when he takes it off, that's when the world gets very weird.
All
right?
hell breaks loose.
That's right. It gets very strange, and he winds up leaving the apartment. And it's an interesting movie, and reminded me of that. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is, did you ever get
on a trip too? I just needed to say that.
We are definitely on a trip.
We are on this is the greatest, what should I say, drug you could ever think of. Is right. That's the trip we're on.
I just had a deja vu with that moment, by the way. That was interesting.
Okay. Mhm.
Did you ever get into George Green stuff, the Handbook for the New Paradigm? Did you ever read that stuff at all?
No, I didn't actually. I haven't actually.
It's actually pretty interesting material. I mean, I only read the first book,
Hmm.
and there's a whole series that came out
Mm.
after that. But one of the things that is a pretty salient point in that book has to do with prime creator,
Mm-hmm.
and that prime creator knows itself through us, through
Hmm.
novelty and creation, and that's where the investment is.
Well, that's because we are it. This is the part that people have a time with. There's such a separateness for us, because we see that there is a source over there. But that source has simply manifested itself into all these various frequency patterns, all these patterns, all these potentialities. That's really what it is. So we are that. Um, in what we would look at as a watered down version. And I don't know if I didn't want to get into that, but it's really hard to kind of respond to that without getting into this part of it. But I think one of the things that's challenging for people is the distinction between the actual body, the technology of the body, and that which we are beyond the technology of the body, because the technology of this body is is engineered or is designed in a way to just simply allow the processing of electrochemical impulses for the experience. It's how we are interacting with the what we would define as the world, or being a human being. It's through how the feelings, and it's chemical. So we have these responses that are processed in the body. So it's the body that's processing this, why you get to have these feelings: happy, sad, mad, angry, whatever. It's all processed through this. But beyond that, you are something else that is like way more expansive. You are an observer as well. That's There's a part of you that's simply observing the activities that are going on, the activities that you are, that part of you that's involved in. And I do believe the body has its own unique intelligence, like a separate self, because everything is in layers.
Mhm.
And it has an identity, it has a character, which is the workshop I'm a 3-part workshop that starts tomorrow, is getting into that part of it and understanding the character, because that is so very important that we understand that, because we identify as that without realizing it. So Sonia is, a character. Robert is a character that is going around really experiencing this story, right?
Mhm.
Experience, having this particular experience. And the character does work very, very much so with the subconscious mind, meaning all of the information that is stored there from past experiences, whether it's your experience or experiences, historic experiences coming from our ancestral pool, because all the data is in your DNA, all the information, like
Mhm.
a computer system.
Right.
So you've got all this information, and the character is aligned with the body, and the body's job is to stay alive. So
Mhm.
the fear that you feel, and the push to survive, is really the body's response to certain frequencies that trigger the survival chemicals, or some survival behavior. This is what is going on. And I think it's really important that we move into a space of understanding that there's two distinct aspects of us happening here. And the body, when we say we, well, you can't do that to us. I'm like, do you even know what you're talking? Who are you talking about? We don't know. Because we don't realize that we operate as these characters, as this body. So everything is personal. It's
Mhm.
offensive. That's all survival. All
Sure.
survival. We're offended. We're hurt. We're
Mhm.
the body aspect. This technology is always scanning. It's its own military. It's
Mhm.
scanning to make sure Look out for anybody that's going to interfere or interrupt, to invade. It's always looking for an invasion. You don't like me. Oh, I don't think that person likes me. That's all part of survival.
Mm-hmm.
It is making sure that whatever it does, got to keep looking around, got to make sure we're on guard and ready to defend ourselves.
Right.
So that's what's happening. And that is processed through this sensory system of the body. So it gets to be in charge, and it can fool you into making you think that you are so enlightened and you're so on it because it's that intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
So there's many levels of who we are. And to me, I am fascinated. It's a brilliant game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This life is brilliant.
Yeah.
And you fall in love with it. And that's also part of the key, part of the magic. It's not the disliking of it and trying to escape it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the getting it. It's like, fascinating game.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you suddenly don't interact or have things coming at you, but you see it and you start to fall in love with it. That's what makes the game start to shift and things start moving out your way. It's not the war with it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the getting it. And then it goes, oh, well, you're not interacting with me because everything needs your permission. Every story that shows up, everything is a frequency, right? So everything that shows up needs your engagement in order for a story to stabilize, for you to have a relationship with that story, in whatever way that story is showing up. It needs your engagement. You don't engage, it goes away, it dissipates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 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 absolutely. I wanted to ask you about sort of this time that we're in, where it's engendering a lot of extreme reactions, extreme responses, because it's just we're in a kind of a deep phase of polarization in a lot of ways at a cultural level, right? But I think there's a real opportunity for people to really look at their robotic programming in terms of how they respond to people, how they react to people, especially with the trigger of social media, which is a very light trigger, right? You can say something very quickly, you can put something out there really quickly, and I think that there's a real potential investment in slowing that down a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
so that we react or we respond to people in ways that are not pre-programmed, right? Because it feels like there's a lot of pre-programmed sort of actualizing going on right now, and
Right
that
now.
this is a level where we can actually assert
Mm-hmm.
freedom of choice, freedom of response, and it's very fundamental. It's not some huge kind of concept, but it's in that moment where we could choose to respond as a robot or react or choose a different kind of response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just put a post on Facebook this morning too, I think a little bit before. Where is it? I just funny you said that. Okay, so the quote I wrote was, we can use this moment of disruption to reevaluate the truth of what we stand for. Only then can fear be converted to power. But right before that, at the top, what I wrote was, we are in a time where fear must be converted to personal power. Personal power means many things, but most of all, it requires that we question everything. We must begin by asking ourselves the truth of what we stand for and the authenticity of that truth. Is it social programming, or is it your own authentic evaluation of what you have been trained to believe? Perhaps it's time to see beyond the smoke and mirrors. So it's interesting that you said that, but that was basically, what I was saying. The get to that authenticity outside of that automatic responses based on training and social programming.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the front lines of consciousness in a lot of ways, and it's so fundamental. But if we can tweak that, and I'm always kind of fine tuning that myself, but if we could do that, and it's like we can kind of move beyond, certain how do I say this? Limitations would be the word that comes to mind.
Oh yeah, definitely, absolutely, and just talking about social media, I think we have to also get to a place where like, which is what I do. When I post, whatever you post, or maybe I make a post. I've learned that you make it, you walk away from it. You're okay with it because you're completely conscious of what you're putting when you put it there. So don't post and then you can't believe somebody's upset because you posted that. If you, whatever you do, be in a conscious state when you're posting, when you're doing those kinds of things. And you have to decide who you want to um, banter with. I don't banter with people on social media. It's just a decision I made. I just don't banter.
Mm-hmm.
It just, so you have to decide because it's like a vortex, and it pulls you in, and that's the normal reactive survival mechanism that comes up at that point. If you're explaining, if two people are explaining something to each other from that standpoint, that's different. But if it's a complete like fight and opposition, then maybe that's something that that person needs to do. But you have to decide: are you trying to convince yourself, or are you trying to convince that person? I think that's what it boils down to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like it could be. I mean, look, I think there's moments where that can be very instructive if the other person is kind of open to it.
Right, if they're open, yeah.
They're open to it. But if
Yeah.
it's not constructive, I think it's another waste of time and energy,
Yeah.
and best be served to kind of move in a different direction
Yeah,
and,
let it be.
yeah,
Mhm.
invest in something else.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm an astrologer by trade, so I look at trends and cycles, and we're
Mhm.
getting ready to move. The nodes are going to shift and go from Cancer to Gemini,
Mhm.
and I've been tracking the nodes for years, and they're really amazing kinds of augurs and barometers that show us where the game is going.
Mhm.
And if we look at the true node in Cancer, which represents home and family, and all the things that we theoretically value about that sign, the closer it got to 0 point Cancer, the more we were entrenched in our homes, right? I mean, it was like
Yeah.
all of a sudden now we're really living that Cancerian kind of program or mandate with Capricorn on the
Yeah.
other side driving it, right?
Yeah.
But now we're getting ready to go into Gemini, which
Mhm.
I think is really interesting because Gemini for me represents games and
Mhm.
game playing. Right.
Mhm.
So now we're headed into this arena that you're very well versed in.
Mhm.
And Gemini is the trickster. And, the trickster doesn't always play by the rules.
Right.
The trickster can hack, the trickster can get very close to breaking the rule, but maybe they bend it just a little bit. Right. So
Right.
we're coming into this period where people are going to have an opportunity to
Mhm.
kind of play this thing in a different kind of way. Right. So
Right.
so it's going to be very fascinating. The other thing with Gemini, and I wanted to get your feedback on this for sure, is that Gemini represents mirror images of reality,
Mhm.
right? Mirror images of reality. And I think a lot of the deep fake technology is going to explode over the next 2 years. And we're going to be given scenes and versions of
Mhm.
people or reality, and they're not even going to be anywhere close
Mhm.
to those people or those events or those things. And so I think it's going to get really tricky navigating so-called reality over the next couple of years,
Yeah.
because of where things are headed. So
Well,
I'd love to get your input on how we navigate this hall of mirrors that I think is that we're approaching.
well, when you talk about astrology, everything that you've said, astrology really does set the scene for it's a blueprint or a map of the default really system at work. And its job is to provide us with all of those moments that you just said, how this happens here and that happens during these particular shift in planets and in houses. um it, it it's providing those frequencies for those opportunities. And so you see how the default system is there in place, but every single one of those systems is giving you, like you said, it's an opportunity. You can go further than the what seems to be the astrological aspect of it. You can go further than that, or you can stay within the boundaries of of the ride. You have the opportunity to do that as well.
Mhm.
Now, as far as how people navigate through this, well, first of all, they just really just need to understand, because this is years back. We just don't hardly hear about it anymore. But when they were talking about, we're going to see holographic projections and we're not going to know what's real and what's not. And, then that kind of died down. Is it because it's been happening? Is that why? And you don't know that it's happening? Because this was years back, right? You remember?
Oh, yeah.
When that was more of a big thing. That's because the whole idea of this game is to get people to settle into, like, they introduce things to us through movies and different ways, and we finally settle in, and our brain starts to accept things as a possibility. And so it doesn't really it doesn't really encounter like, oh no. That's the whole idea of how things are done with us, is to get us acclimated. So when and if you're encountering something, because everything honestly is real according to the relationship you're going to have with it, the engagement you're going to have with it. I think that I personally wouldn't worry about, am I going to be encountering something real? How am I going to know? You will know if you take the biggest step possible, and is to really get introduced to yourself. And I don't mean no woo-woo fluffy. I'm not talking on that soft level. I am talking about what I said before about the technology of the body and the aspects of you that it supersedes that. If you can really commit, because this is what this requires. It requires commitment and desire and hunger to see more, not like a little fluffy, okay, well, I did it today, I did it for a week. That's what I'm talking about. Right. I'm talking about where it becomes a habit, it becomes what really is, and you're in touch with that part of you at all times. You're online with that part of you. You're never not online, you've just been ignoring it. But you're really in awareness of that being in connection. Then you will know. It's as simple. We will know if there's a tsunami coming. If you're plugged in, you will know all of a sudden you're leaving town that weekend. Right. It's just the way it is. Right. If you're plugged into fear all the time like that, then that interferes. It actually runs a frequency of interruption, just like a static in a radio broadcast, a radio station. You hear the static, so you can't hear. It interrupts the frequency. Your thoughts interrupt the frequency, the broadcast that's coming through to you, because you're operating on a lesser frequency. You can't hear it. So this is all about an opportunity and a moment in time. It's a deciding point as to your loyalty to yourself, to that part of you, recognizing that you are way more than the technology of your body, and that this game you've been playing, we've all been playing the limited version of the game because we had to. That has been our job as human beings. Our job as human beings is to come into this simulation, this virtual experience, and discover the most limiting possibilities, right? Because all that exists are potentials, right? Well, potentials, if all that exists are potential, it means everything is a possibility. And that which is, that we call source or the undefinable, it knows all. So it wants to know the journey of the experience. This is about the experience itself. That's where the data is gathered. A scientist might say, I think that the outcome of mixing these two potions together will result in this. But they're not going to know until they put those two potions together and get the reaction. Well, our experience and engagement with reality is about the reaction. That's the reason for the suit. That's the reason for the suit, to be able to upload this data, to be able to process the experiencing of all of this. And that data, we breathe in, we breathe out. We are transmitters and receivers. We inhale, we're taking in information, data, that is beyond any concept or thought that we could have, where however oxygen gets created and all the components associated with allowing those gases to be formed that are coming from a stream of substance beyond any concept of time and possibility, you're taking that in.
Mm-hmm.
You exhale, you're also sending out information. This is nothing but data streams. Everything is made up of information. We're data, we're information. Now, the trick now is to begin to understand these pieces,
Mm-hmm.
and know who you are, that I am bigger. You might not get this completely, everything we talked about, but just know, if nothing else, I am so much more than this experience. And with that, you say to yourself, you know what? I am ready to understand this.
Mm-hmm.
I am ready to know, and say it with conviction and meaning. I am really ready, not topical. I am ready to know. And I trust myself. I trust that part of me to guide me every step of the way down this rabbit hole,
Mm-hmm.
and commit to it. It's that simple. I came with, what do you think I came with? All that I understand and I know. It's not from books. It's just not from any of that. It was from my simple decision, or huge decision, to tap in and to go, you know what? I really have a feeling that there's a way for me to know. And the more I knew is the more I realized that it was my right to do that. I was supposed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And those people who are coming from the biblical arena, again, I remind you of that one scripture: greater works than these shall ye do. And regardless of who wrote whatever the truth of the matter is with the Bible, I tell you what, it exists for a reason, because they've got all kinds of interesting stuff in there that makes sense. So there's something that needs to be conveyed to you, and it's being conveyed in different ways through
Mm-hmm.
stories.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we have a story of someone that walked on water and did all these things, or supernatural things,
Mm-hmm.
and then that person turned around and said, greater works than these shall ye do. It doesn't matter if somebody made it up or not. They are telling you something,
Right.
and you need to adhere to that. And that was one of the driving forces for me, Robert,
Mm-hmm.
was remembering that. And I thought, what are these greater works, and what is it that I should be able to do? And I just started, and I committed to it, and I've never looked back, because it is nothing to look back to. It
Mm-hmm.
became just my life.
Right.
It's just who I am. It hasn't stopped me from doing anything else, but I live in a state of understanding and awareness, um, that it just makes life easier.
It's interesting because earlier in our talk, I was going to ask you, like, when was your aha moment, or what was your epiphany? And it sounds like that might have been it. Am I right about that?
Oh yeah, that was it. I
Yeah.
went through a marriage, and I was in there for 14 years, and it was a difficult experience. And even though I asked questions when I was younger, I was reading Edgar Casey, and curious about the Bermuda Triangle. I'm talking as a teenager, but
Right. Right.
just since I was a child, I was just very different.
Right.
I didn't believe in death as a child. It just was weird to me. I just
Yeah.
couldn't understand it. So that tells you where. But in 1992, that moment of getting out of that marriage and going, what the hell was that? That's what did it for me. I was like, okay, I need to understand what this thing is we call life. What is this?
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I set out on my own, quietly, diligently, for 10 straight years of digging in and diving into myself on my own, um, to really, till a point where, yes, then it became solid. So from 1992 on, and I didn't till 2007 was really when I started to complete the book. And then January, technically January 2008, the book came out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I didn't set out to write a book at that time either.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another story how that happened. But that was like the defining moment, and it allowed me to let go. So people were holding on to relationship issue things with their exes and all of that. Man, when I got it, when I got it was like gratitude to this person. It was
Mm.
like, wow, because that forced me into having to ask these questions and having to go ahead and take that journey. And then there was nothing, betrayal, those things that I may have experienced. In the first part of the book, people will see it in holographic canvas where I thanked all the people that made me happy, made me sad, made me this, made me that. I had such tears in my eyes with gratitude to them because, on a level that goes beyond this life, I felt a profound love that these entities said, I will enter a body. And in those moments where you're going to need this push, you will dislike me and it'll be okay, but you're going to go forward and do what you need to do. And that's how I felt about all of that. So it allowed me to surrender anything that I had with these people. It just wasn't there anymore because I got it. There was no need for anybody to apologize to me. It was nothing. It was just, oh, I got it. Moved on.
Great lesson. A couple things I want to ask you about, or one I want to just kind of bring up so we can discuss. Another one to ask you about. Then we'll bring Steve on, and he'll have some questions, I think, from Chatlandia. So I find it really interesting that they basically just axed all sports, right? They just said sports are done, NBA done. When the NBA was done, I knew the game had changed.
Yeah, that's it. The game.
The game had changed. It's like they're saying game over. Like your little pastimes, your little games, like these are meaningless now. We have decided to end those games.
Well, it's a change in games. It's a
It's a
symbology.
change. It's a change in games. Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
the human game. It's this game that's being changed. So when the games come back, there is nothing that will come back the same. The entire construct of the game has changed. And people also need to remember, where do you think we get these ideas from? The idea for games, as far back as they go, is always a symbol of the bigger game. That's what we do. Technology is based on the bigger technology. Everything is just mimicking something bigger. That's all. That's where we're getting this information fed to us, is from what already is the construct of things, how things are already set up, beyond what we can see and understand. And that's why some of these constructs, and when we talk about like secret societies and so on a bigger level, and I'm never talking about little, because there's a level there, and all of this is sort of streaming down from that place. The them against us, that's been the game from before we came onto this planet. There's a bigger them against us game that continues to play. And I want to throw this out to folks. You've heard people say, again, they're a handful of people that run everything. How do you know that the people that are really at the apex of this particular construct in here, down here, aren't thousands of years old? How do you know that? You don't know that.
That's right. That's
true.
right.
Yeah, what you're delivered is, and think about it, what the human race as we know it, what we're delivered is a prescription and an idea for the concept of birth to death. And that concept is upheld, and we pass it on from parent to child, generation to generation. It is a program that continues to be passed down for various reasons. That particular program continues so that people come, they expire at a certain time. There is more at work here, people. And this is what I've spent years deciphering and understanding. So many of the things that we talk about, that we do in workshops and stuff, no, it's not going to be on YouTube. And because we're digging into bigger pictures of this, and we're taking it apart, and people are getting it. So people that are part of what we do, they're not a group mind, because that's not what this is about. This is about the individual being strong. Sure, you can be part of a group, but the group is only as strong as each person. And each person has to come with their be strong, become and be strong, because there's a lot more going on here. And if you say, oh, that's ridiculous, you've drank the Kool-Aid and you're not, that's what you're coded for, to be in that understanding, because the game must continue. And so we need people who are going to keep the game going on that end in order to support those who are not. Your job is to be there, to be annoying as hell, to, to help to push the other people forward. That might be your role. So, but anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there so people.
No, it's a really good point, and I wanted to show this to you. You may have seen this already, but this is one of these like strange anomalies that I think kind of bears witnessing, right? Like, so here we have the Dr. Fauci of the 1918 Spanish flu.
Right.
Like what? So what do you make of this? I mean, this is really interesting on some level. Like, is Fauci really this guy? And has Fauci been around for hundreds of years?
Yeah, I was actually writing an article. I just haven't released it. That has to do with the 6 feet distancing and so on. But yeah, that's a good question. And I'm gonna do, what do they do on radio shows? I'll take my answer off the air. I'll make my response off the air.
So the whole thing with Fauci's, I think, kind of interesting, because they're using this grandfatherly like figure to sell this thing. Oh, we could trust him. He's like grandpa. Grandpa was always nice to us. Grandpa was always kind to us. So
that's it. Because people are programmed to look for a certain appearance, just like they sell us old age on TV. From a child, you already expect grandpa to have like COPD and walking around and looking a certain way. So from you're a child, you are programmed to understand what you are going to also participate in, because it's a program. So we don't know who's walking around here. Let me just say that. We don't know who's moving around. But this game is way bigger than people think and much deeper, and they need to snap out of it. And you don't have to snap out of it either, because there are some of us that are snapped out of it, and we see it and we get it. And you move into a state of timelessness. Right now, people can't move into timelessness because the program doesn't allow for that. And that's why you're starting to hear some scientists come along and say aging is a disease, and they start talking about some of those things. There's many things that it would be best for the certain group that human beings, as we know it, don't have this information.
Right.
Because the awareness interrupts the game. It's like we can't have everybody wealthy, because then wealth wouldn't exist. You couldn't get to be up here if everybody was there, then there would just be there. So
right. I agree with you. And LeBron James just had this big kind of, PSA about eliminating all poverty, right? Eliminating all poverty. And and all these kids will get to have everything that theoretically I didn't have. Well, LeBron, if you didn't have what you didn't have, you wouldn't be LeBron James.
You wouldn't be. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's kind of
logic into thinking, though. There's to understand. A lot of times people aren't thinking that. Here's the thing: there is a good person program. I always talk about this good person program. There are all these programs for our character self that have been prescribed and have put there, and people want to fit into that. You want to sound like a good, LeBron, he's such a good guy, wanting to do all of these things. And so you want that. You want to be part of being identified as a good person or whatever it is. You want that. And so rational thought goes out the way. Not only that, we don't know who is orchestrating some of the stuff that some of these ball players say, some of these folks.
Yeah.
There's just a lot that goes on.
There is a lot that goes on.
That's going on. It just make you just want to go sit down and just be quiet.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And when I started to discover some of these things, and these things were just like coming to me, and I would literally, I used to go, okay, I gotta go sit down. And I would take 2 days because I couldn't believe what I'm just getting. I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to think about that. I just want to
Right.
go sit over here for a couple days and then come back to it.
Right.
Reading God isn't like what I thought. That was my first realization, one of my first big realization that came to me coming from a church background. And I was like, okay, I need about a few days on that. And then of course, then you settle in, you start to settle into being okay with seeing, because seeing is going against the programs.
Yeah.
And you're trained not to do that. People think that they're so aware, and you see how they'll post stuff on politics and stuff, and it's like, you have no idea
Right.
what you're talking about,
Right.
but that's their job to do.
Well, yeah, I call that the simulacra of awakening. And it's like they set up a program. They will inoculate you with the program in the halls of higher learning. They'll give you an accreditation that says you are awakened. You're woke. Here you go. You've studied some French deconstruction theory, some post-critical Marxist theory, and you put it all together, and you are woke. And it's the simulacra of awakening. And they walk around with this, right, as if it's their shield, and eventually becomes their badge, eventually becomes their shield, and they put it up against reality and says, you're not going to get past this because this is my indoctrination and training. And then they gather together with a bunch of other people who have the same ideas,
right?
So they can all stroke each other and say, aren't we awake?
The character, though, that's what I was talking about. It's a training of the identity, because all of that becomes your identity. That's a success and failure program, and the superiority program, the who's better program, the even the idea of class, middle class, upper middle class, and all of those things are these categorizations, and the categories you don't want to be a part of. You don't want to be in the lower class. Let's just say that. You don't want to be down here. Because they've created this model, this dream, that you want to aspire to. You want to be part of that. And we see this through the things that are used, the tools that are used to allow us to believe that we are now part of an elite group, or we have arrived at a certain level of success. And I like to always point out how interesting it is that certain people can slap their symbol on a car or clothing or whatever, and place a certain programmed value in that. And you use it to identify yourself. We use it to identify ourselves. Oh my God. And I'm not saying there's anything right or wrong about the car, because I do like Alexas. They are comfortable. All right, I do. But you're looking at why are you getting it? Is it a status? Is it that you want to be validated? Is it that you want to be recognized as being in this level right here? There's a lot of that. So the people are running around wanting to be in these levels that have been created. And what do? We ask when we meet, oh, what do you do? Well, now we need to decide what category we're going to put you in. Oh, you're a doctor. Oh, you're a lawyer. Oh, okay, great. Oh, what do you do? Okay, well, you're not that important. So they have the system that have created these constructs have us evaluating each other in that manner. They don't have to do anything, really. We do it to ourselves. We police ourselves. We do all the stuff ourselves. So it's looking at, again, the vastness of the game. There is so much going on. It just makes your head swim. And the biggest part of this is to see yourself in it. Yeah, you might think you're not. I do it all the time. I'm like, whoa, I'm evaluating someone because it's automatic. This is all an automatic program that's been running for a long time. So you might not even notice you're doing it, that you are evaluating somebody according to status or according to whatever. And it's where you put yourself. And they want the system, in that particular system in place, wants you to do that to yourself, to put yourself in these categories. Well, the wealthy people, well, that's for them. But that's not for us. So there's a loyalty also to being poor.
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I want to get back to this idea of appropriating symbols or appropriating kind of the material trapping or piece. And a lot of the reasons why people do this is because there's an efficacy around it, right? Because now they have the thing, it's the symbol, it's the code, and it seems on some level to work, right? Or else they wouldn't do it unless it worked. Now, whether or not it's authentic, that's a whole other story, right? That's a whole other kind of tale. But there's a reason why they do it, because it works on some level.
It works all the time. So that's why when I'm talking to entrepreneurs, I'm talking to people in that sense of coaching, it's like, what value do you place on what you do? Because we're programmed to again, the good person program runs, and so we want to make everything, we want to make it affordable so everybody can do it, and that's really not it. Because what I learned is people do pay for what they place value on. It's crazy.
I know.
They will go, I'm not paying for this, but I'll pay for this. If you give this to me for that, then fine. But I'll do this. So we have to really step back and understand, as either business owners, entrepreneurs, what is the value you place? Because you can't go and place a $5,000 value in something if you don't believe in it. If you don't believe that, if you're uncomfortable, don't do it. You have to price things according to how comfortable you are, because that's what it is. And then you put your price and you walk away. This is what you have to be able to do. You have to be able to say, this is what I think this is worth, and you walk away. And if nobody buys it or gets it, that's what you have to do. You have to step away from it and be okay. But we're not programmed that way, because unless you are part of that crowd of wealth, because they don't think like that. They think completely different.
Absolutely.
So the programming is for you. And then the pushing the story of Jesus, the carpenter and poor, was that even true? So everybody wants to be in that kind of state, whether you're religious or not. We have a lot of religious programs, even though we say that we're not religious and you're atheist. That religious program runs deep.
Very deep. Very, very deep. Real quick, I'm going to bring Steve on in a second, but I wanted to ask you, and we could probably talk about this thing for another hour because it's such a big topic, but I wanted to ask you about CERN. And CERN is like a game changer, right? We've got this massive super collider playing with antimatter, playing with, vortex reality. Have you dived into CERN very much at all?
No, I haven't. Okay. I haven't dived into, no, I really haven't. I haven't, but it wouldn't even matter. I mean, if I, go and check it out now.
I think it would be interesting to you on the level of a game, right? Because CERN seems like potentially a massive game changer in this so-called reality. And if it's a massive game changer in this so-called reality, then how does it affect us? So how do we have our own version of CERN inside of ourselves?
Well, here's what I know is going to happen on this level. We're in preparation stage. I said that for several years. As a matter of fact, my older son just found a video of a show that I had been on called, it was Matrix TV some years ago. And there was one lady, I forgot Dr. Oh gosh, her name, but she was talking about smart technology before it was really understood. And I talked myself out of the point I was going to make about the show that I was on. There was something that I was talking about with the show that I was on, and it had to do with what you just asked me about CERN. Oh my gosh, it had to do with something about what you asked me about CERN. You said, have I looked into it? And I said, I haven't really. Gosh, and it just went out of.
Yes, CERN decided to wipe out that memory on you.
It's interesting. Yes, the way we are playing, how we are playing the game, and it had some. I think this is what I was going to say. All right, so the technology we're talking about right now, And I kept saying that this 5G idea is just, it's minuscule. It's a launching pad.
Yeah.
Because the next level is human beings going online. And I said that for years. I go, we talk about smart technology, and we see the gradual hookup, how it started in layers of down here, and then here, and then here, and then the cars, and then the appliances, and then, well, who's the last person? You.
Right.
Human beings. And this is part of setting the stage for that kind of thing. Now, when you are part of this reality right now, particularly the people that have been here for a while, and this is a very important thing that people need to keep in mind. When you're born into a time, you're now coded with that behavior of the time and the patterns and how reality works.
Right.
We now just happen to be at a moment in time where we are actually acknowledging a major shift, something that hasn't happened in a very long time. So it's a big opposition to the program that we had, that we know what reality is. Yet we do not know, because we weren't there, as to what reality was thousands of years ago, other than information that we have. So what is every time structure? I mean, there's gaps of time that we're part of. Could be 100, 200 years, wherever the similarity, the base similarity of reality is consistent. We fight for the familiar and the similar. I mean, the familiar more than anything else. This is what we're familiar with.
Right. Yeah.
When kids are born into this, and if it changes, and they come in and you're automatically online, that will be their normal, and it will not be questioned. So, is a part of it is getting rid of some of the older folks, like in the Matrix, when they talk about that, not changing a mind after 25, but now there's a specific group of people they keep reinforcing between 65 and 85. Sometimes they go 60. They're reinforcing an idea. They reinforce it in commercials, at a particular age. This is reinforced all day long, not just to older people, but to younger people. It is a reinforcement so that you are wired by the time you get to that certain age to think a certain way. And so it's real important that we realize whatever time you're born into, that is your normal, and you will fight for that normal. But if for those people who are born into 5 and 6G, that is what they will know, and they will not fight for this, because this is outdated, will be outdated and ancient.
Right. That's a great point. Really great.
There's a movie that I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's called the Man from Earth.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I know. I know about that movie. Yeah,
it's interesting because he supposedly has been around since the caveman days, and he's managed to, every 10 years he has to move and change his name so that people don't see that he's not aging. And so he's living through all these times and seeing all these changes that are occurring. And he brought this group of, because he's a professor, so he brought this group of people when he got ready to move. He's never told anybody before, but he got these group of people, his colleagues in the university, and he went to a cabin, and he decided he was going to tell them the truth. Of course, there was a lot of opposition on it, and the Bible, and it was just so many things, because they just couldn't believe any of what he was saying. And so there you have it. But it's an interesting film to watch, because here he is. And as long as you are here, if you're 200 years, you're going to encounter seeing all the different changes that will happen, that will form 200 years from now. It's the way it is. So think about if you have folks that have been running stuff for a long time, and they've been watching all the changes and impacting changes, and just so much moving forward through time. Things are not as they seem, people. Reality is not as it seems. Your brain is the interface. And so just knowing that, and knowing that with that interface is responding to perception. And your perception is only as big as your little tiny belief system.
Right.
Your perception has to have latitude so that you can see, and it gives your brain permission to remove levels of this filter.
Yeah, it's only, you're only able to see as much as your frame of reference will allow you to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. This is great. Sonia, we could talk all afternoon. It'd be a great conversation. But I'm going to bring Steve in right now because I'm sure there are people from the chat room that would like to ask you some questions as well. So what's going on, Thor?
Hey, Steve.
How you doing? Good to see you. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. Everybody's loving it. What I get from this too is that we're all responsible for our experience, right? And maybe you could say that the beauty of the story is its own reward. And I'm with like you said, everybody's playing their role here. And we're having these cosmic reset points. And I'm wondering what can we do? They have a hive mind, the controllers, the ones putting all of this together, that seem to be controlling us. And I'm wondering what are some of your suggestions for us to build a culture, or what are some of the daily practices to for us to keep our energy up, to be able to have that higher perspective and not be so fearful, and make a good shift as we're going through this time? Or some of the practices.
Okay. I guess some of that we touched on, but in the sense of keeping your energy up, I think I always have to go back to this. I always have to go back to how curious are you? See, curiosity drives you. Curiosity and being suspicious of everything.
Right.
Curiosity and suspicion is our trigger point. So you have to ask yourself, just how curious are you? And then I think to begin with, you have to evaluate your own life right now. You have to evaluate, and this is not about, I'm always careful to tell people, this is not about blaming yourself or any of that. It is just a moment in time to begin to evaluate where you are and what you understand and how you've been operating. It's that moment to be able to do that, because you need all of that to keep you strong. If you do not get into know thyself, into that idea of know thyself, there is nothing that I can say that will give you momentum or keep you motivated. You have to begin to look at where am I? What do I really believe? What is my truth about this? Wow. Well, you start realizing, but that's really what I learned. My parents told me. That's really what I picked up from this from college. Oh, I was kind of taught to do things this way. You have to start stopping and looking at your your design. Everybody is custom made to something. Yeah, really. You're sort of custom made from before you got in here, maybe in the womb and then on. So this custom made version of yourself. And that's what you start looking at is this custom made version. And you ask yourself, well, what do I believe? That's what I did. This is even after I started to understand this. I'm like, how do I even know I like this color? What, I started asking just basic, questions like, or is it because it's been projected that blue is a good color?
Right.
I just, you just start asking ridiculous questions. You just question everything. Start paying attention. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's really nothing to be afraid of, as they say, but truly fear itself. And you cannot let that make you frozen, freeze you. You have to ask these questions of yourself and then observe your life down to, am I happy? What does happy mean for me? Have I been just living a comfortable life? Maybe I'm with this person, I'm miserable. Um, what am I doing? It's all of that. See, we want to, sometimes people want to jump into like, well, how can I just understand spiritual things? Well, no, it requires a whole observation and seeing yourself, because up until this point, your life is made up of all of those things. And you can't move forward into certain levels of understanding. You cannot access it if you're standing on a platform of these limiting constructs. So that's the reason why we start to evaluate ourselves and see who we are, what we're made of, and then we begin to be ready and committed. And most importantly, we are okay with telling ourselves the truth about ourselves. More importantly, you have to do that, because it's not a blame, it's not shame, it's not any of that. It's just seeing things the way they are. Everything you've done in your life up until this point has been everything that you needed to do to get you to this point. Doesn't matter what it is. The entire journey has gotten you here to this moment in time. And that's important for us to remember, that the whole life has been a stepping stone until this moment in time. So in this moment, you have to decide to see the trail and the beauty and the gifts that you have retrieved that you from all of those experiences. It doesn't matter what they are. Then you're ready to move forward. And that will make you strong and solid in continuing to move forward and to see that things aren't quite as they seem, but I don't have to be at war with it, because this game is all about me coming into a deep level of awareness.
Yeah, amen to that. And I think when people ask those questions about their life, they also have to be willing to live with the answers that they get back. That's
Yep.
the second part of that equation,
That's
which is not always an easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of questions, Steve, what do we have from Chatlandia? I'm sure some people are very curious and have things that they'd like to share or ask Sonia about.
Yeah, she's kind of answered. So one was, what do you think about the chakra system, the overlays? Because some people talk about removing your chakras, and I had a thought before I even read that question. That's from Mojo McMama. But what do you think? And I think maybe your answer is going to be the whole body. But what do you think our main interface in the physical form is with our higher spiritual nature?
Yeah, well, you just sort of said it. And I think all of those components, because of how we are sort of trained and programmed, they're all relevant. But we have operated in such a fragmented way that we like to get pieces of, like, how do we get this activated and that thing activated and this activated, when the whole system is the whole system. I don't focus on, like, getting my chakra. I really don't even think about my chakras, quite honestly, because the information that I'm talking about that you're going to move yourself to is going to make all the adjustments you need. It's going to make all the adjustments you need. That is the trust factor there. It's going to make all the adjustment you need. Why? Because information, like everything else, has a vibration. It's frequency. Mm-hmm. And the knowledge and the awareness, like your brain, for example, thoughts, for example, they say thoughts levitate above the head, and they come and thoughts come in the form of light streams, comes through the ventricles in the brain, comes right into the spinal fluid. The spinal fluid bathes all the cells. So all your thinking and your beliefs and your thoughts are constantly just coming through to your body. So whatever it is that the changes need to be, it has to change. in your thinking. It changes in your heart, because that's a major this is the biggest generator in the entire body. That information changes, and the message is sent to everything, because the brain is the interface. So messages get sent to all the cells of everything that we're doing, everything that we want to happen. That information from the heart goes into the DNA, and that's how we're changing information in DNA. It's this generator right here, the frequency from that generator sends that information. So it's this whole system at work. So that's the reason why it's important that we understand, that we move into a state of understanding and not live in a state of fragmentation anymore. It's not fix my, okay, well, let me fix this finger right here. I'm just going to fix this thing right here. Yet the pain in the finger is coming from something up here, which is coming from something up here. We have to begin to be more holistic. We need to become whole. We need to understand that the entire being is looking for homeostasis. It's looking for balance. It's looking for that. And if it's health, understand this, you will even be directed to the ideal individual appropriate for what you need. It's a complete trust system with the whole being, all of who you are. And you start learning to trust that. So that's what I say. There's nothing to be removed. Don't remove anything. There's nothing to be removed. Everything just wants to come into balance. And that balance happens through our understanding and the direction that we start to get from that expansive part of who we are.
Nice. Good. So stop being so compartmentalized.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think a good example of what you just said was, I heard you say when you were writing this latest New World article that you just got the download and it just all came through.
Oh yeah. Which is generally how it happened. I was gonna write. I thought, okay, well, I kind of have the feeling about an article, and I started writing, and then the next thing I know, it turns into. Now I'm irritated, actually, because now that means I have to sit here and write this, and I am it's all there, but now I'm forced to put it into words, and I'm not in the mood to do it. And that's what happens sometimes at writing, because it's all there. It's not in words, but I know it. So yeah, so I thought, so it took me a few days, because I step away from it for a couple of days and I let it marinate, like this other article that I have. If you happen to mention the 1918,
Mm-hmm.
and dealing with the distancing, the idea of 6 feet apart,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the the things associated with that idea. And I finished it to a certain point, but it didn't feel finished. So it's just been sitting for, I don't know, probably a couple of weeks. It's been just sitting until I feel like going back and finishing it. So that's kind of how I operate. So that,
Right.
yeah, the article I didn't know I was putting in anything about China. I didn't set out to. It just all was like, okay, you need to put this in here, and you need to add that, and that's kind of how it all happens.
Right. Well, Sonia, this has been terrific. Thank you for being on the show today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and it was an honor and a pleasure. I really appreciate it, and to your audience as well. Thank
Now,
you.
now you have a workshop or a series of workshops coming up?
Yeah, I have a workshop. If you want to, you can go to where it says events.
Yeah, right there.
And go to all workshops. And and then it's that one, the natural. This was actually sort of almost like a second part, the natural science of the path, inward, living the life of the character.
Mm-hmm.
And they can, when they come, they click on read more, and it will give them all the information about that. It's a 3-part. You have to click on this one, the second one, where
right here, the read more.
Yeah.
There we go.
And so there is 3 parts. If you scroll down, you will see it's a 3-part series, and the
Mhm.
3 parts are right there. Examining, oops, yeah, there it is. Examining your character's script more closely. What does this really mean? Number 2 is tapping into the O spot, how to feel the observer self and how to tap the feeling for focus and direction. Number 3 is basic principles of going beyond the death code, understanding that being timeless requires much more than diet, exercise, and positive thinking.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's another definition of the O spot. You know that, right?
Which one is that? I'm like, which O spot are we talking about?
Yeah, no, so no, so that's in reference to like this thing where they actually take your blood and spin your blood,
Okay.
right? And then they re-inject it in certain parts of your anatomy, also
Yeah.
known as the O spot.
Oh, I've
Uh,
definitely, yeah, I've heard of that.
but you've got a different O spot you're working
Yeah.
on
No,
here,
this
right?
this is a different O spot.
Okay. All right.
Everything I do is always like out somewhere else. So
Okay. Well, anyway, this is available for people, and you can go to Sonia's website and
mhm.
sign right on up there. And it starts tomorrow. Good timing to have you
Yep.
on the show.
Yeah. Thank you.
And maybe if we have our event here in October, you could be a part of it. You want to think about that.
Oh, that would be nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, maybe we
Yeah.
talk about that offline, as they say.
Right. Yeah. I'm only up for things, doing events now that truly aligns. That's why I kind of backed away for a while from doing some. I just, that's just where I'm at. I just want to do things that are in a, yeah, that I feel aligned with, and are really not taking people down just a path of fear to make money off of them because you're scaring them. That's
Right.
not what I want to be a part of.
Yeah, and I think there's a heavy personal consequence to deal with when you get involved in
Yeah.
that kind of energy exchange.
Mhm.
So, well, thank you once again, Sonia. Thank you.
Thank you both,
Blessings.
Robert, Steve, your
Thank
audience.
you.
Thank you.
So
It's been a
special.
pleasure.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we will see you down the line, and hopefully we'll even see you perhaps here in October. So go
Right.
to the realsoniabarrett.com, check her out, check out her webinar. And for me and Steve and Jasper and Rosie, we'll see you guys on Sunday night with Astro Live. And I'll be back on Monday with 15 Minutes of Flame. So
Oh, and I need to tell people to make sure you go to my YouTube. I'm trying to build my YouTube channel, to subscribe to my YouTube channel.
okay, we'll put your link in there so people can find you as well.
Thank you,
Okay.
guys. Thank
You're,
you.
you're welcome. Okay. Everybody have a great weekend. See you on Sunday night.
All right. So we're good. All right.
Yep.